What is up, my guy?
What's up, dude? Long time no talk.
I know it's been a minute. Moving sucks, by the way.
Oh yeah, how was that, by the way?
It was garbage.
Super fun.
I don't ever want to move again. I say that every time. Um, yeah, moving sucks, dude. Having to do it, having to go to work every day and then come home, grab a load of stuff, drive an hour, each direction to drop it off and do it all over again every day.
Yeah,
I had like 3-4 weeks where I was just balls to the wall.
that's fucking awesome, though.
Yeah. I mean, I like where I'm at now. I'm in North Idaho and it's a pretty free place to be. And, I'm digging it, man. Small town. I love it.
Dude, I was right behind you, bro. I want to get the fuck out of Washington too.
Yeah, I totally feel you. Yeah, I don't want to be anywhere near there, whenever it comes to, well, anything, honestly. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know if you saw this, but, so for those who don't remember, Washington State had that assault weapons ban pass, and they went to challenge it in court, and a judge said that they would ruled against the injunction, and they're literally not making this up. You can Google this. The wording they used was that these guns fire a round with every trigger, with every sorry these guns, these assault weapons, fire around with every trigger squeeze, unlike normal guns. And I was like, this guy's a judge?
Dude, this is
Like,
real life.
I know. I feel like at a certain point, we have to establish certain standards at this point for like the judicial system, to where like if you're going to hear a case that has to do with firearms, you have to prove that you know what the hell you're talking about.
That you're not a complete
Be a judge. Yeah, it's stupidity.
It's phenomenal. It's the best thing in the world, honestly.
Yeah, I don't understand how these people stay alive.
Bro, sometimes I just want to beat my head against a rock after I see, like, and it's so funny because like I love the state and I love being here. I love the place that it is. I love everything about this state, but the politics and the people are so bad.
That's the thing, is like Washington State is a beautiful area. It's very diverse, like culturally, very diverse.
Yeah.
Geographically, like you've got high deserts, you've got like actual sandy deserts, you've got rainforest, you've got Rocky Mountains, you've got the Cascades. I mean, you've got everything
The
outside of
only
the jungle
the
you can.
only rainforest in America is Washington.
Really? I did
Yeah.
not know.
Yeah, I was finding that out. The only rainforest that is in Washington State, well, in the United States, is Washington, and it's like the heavy forest we have here. The huge
Yeah.
forest. Yeah.
It just sucks that you have to have people come in and ruin it. And it's like, why can't the crappy people like Democrats like to live where it's like really crappy out, like North Dakota or something?
Go somewhere. Go somewhere there I never want to go.
Yeah, like just go live in North Dakota in the winter. Just do that. Like, why do you have to live where it's nice?
It's
Um,
ruining everything for everyone.
yeah, same thing with like California. California is a beautiful place. 70 and sunny all year long is ideal weather, but
Yeah,
it's just not worth it because of all the bullshit.
for real, dude.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah, so moving sucks. Other than that, not too much, too crazy, too new going on. Anything for you as we kind of, catch up right here?
No, actually, not a lot going on. Been kind of chilling. There's a little bit going on, kind of exciting, but I'll tell you later.
Ooh. I know I've seen one of the things I've seen recently is, and I think it's kind of funny. The East Coast is on fire right now with all these Canadian wildfires coming down. You've
Yeah,
got all these orange skies and all this crazy stuff, and everyone's talking about getting gas masks, and like I don't want to diminish the importance of a gas mask, and I think you definitely should, and it's definitely a good example of getting one. But I do think it is kind of funny because I do see a lot of East Coast people and Midwest people like freaking out, and I'm just sitting here because those of us on the West Coast, we all know between California and Canada, It basically our cities look like Silent Hill for a month in the summertime.
Yeah.
We have a whole month of fire season, and it gets to where it's like 98 degrees and you can't see your hand in front of your face because of the smoke. So I'm just sitting here like that meme where he's like, first time.
Yeah. No, not my
So yeah, I mean, I definitely wanted to encourage people to still go out there and get a gas mask, but it's definitely one of those things where it's like, I don't know, I don't get as hyped up about it. I'm like, that happens all the time.
It's whatever.
So moving on, we're gonna do something a little bit different this time.
Mm.
We're gonna kind of do something to where a lot of times over the last couple episodes we've talked about basically, let's call it theory, right? We've talked about things that you should do, things you could look at, ways of thinking, but we've never really put it all together. So we're kind of going to do like fun little thing here, of me and Mike are I'm going to throw out a scenario, and me and Mike are going to kind of run through what we would do in this scenario for the next 24 hours, depending on how time goes and how long it takes us. We might bump it out to 48. And with that being said, the scenario we're going to have, and just kind of think as we go along with this, what you would do, what you might do differently, depending on your living situation, your priorities, where you're at, what your experience, what you think we got right, what you think we got wrong, if there's anything we missed. Um, I would encourage you to reach out to us on social media at our Instagram handles that we'll put in the description, and then give us your opinions. Tell us if there's something that you were like, wow, I never would have thought of that. It's a super smart idea. Or if there's something to where you're like, hey, that's super stupid. You shouldn't do that. You should have done whatever. Right. So with that being said, the scenario we're going to go for is we're making it a little bit easier to begin with. You're going to be at home. So that's a big plus. So you're at home.
Okay.
It's middle of the day, let's say 4 or 5 in the afternoon, summer afternoon. Currently, it's like early June. So let's say early June, wherever you're at, power goes out, your phone goes out. Like basically any all of your phone goes out, your vehicle's not working, and the power's out, right? So you think it might be an EMP. You at this point in time, whatever me and Mike have currently in our possession, we're not going to work off hypotheticals, right? So we're not going to be like, I went down and got my 1950s ham radio if we don't have it, right? We're going to work with what we have.
Yeah.
You don't know if it's been an EMP from like a nuclear attack, if it was a sunspot or a sun flare, if it was natural caused, or if just coincidentally you didn't charge everything. So within the next 24 hours, what do you do? So what are your first steps, Mike? Like, power's out, nothing's working. What's your next step?
Secure dominance, rape the largest man I can find. No.
I like it. This is getting off to
No, realistically, what I'm going to do in that situation is my number one priority is going to be securing some form of hydrate, like water. I want water. I want to know what's going on also. So you're going to go to your neighbors. Hey, what's happening? Try to ask them what's happening because you're at your house, and hopefully you're cool with your neighbors. You're echoing really hard for some reason.
It could just be for those that are listening. If I have an echoes, I apologize. I am currently in my garage man cave type of deal, so we might be a little bit more of an echo than normal.
Okay. Yeah, and my first, hopefully you're really cool with your neighbors, but first priority for me is going to be going around to everyone, figuring out what's going on, see if they have any information I don't have.
Yeah, I think that would be a good step. My first step too, right? Well, you nailed it right on the head. For me is water, right? So I know that even with power out, most houses, your water is controlled by an electric pump, is how it gets through the pipes, into your cup or your faucet or whatever. So what I would do is I would basically find anything that could hold water and just start flooding every valve, get the hose outside, filling stuff up, get the bathtub filled up, start filling up whatever water I can into as many containers as I have, get as much water as possible. And if I haven't already, start trying to figure out where local water sources are. And, is it something I could go within walking to? Is there a bunch of people that are going to be there? Where can I go get water once I run out of this, if I run out of this? Second thing, like you said, um, going out trying to get information, right? Currently, like the scenario says, we don't know what caused this. If it's something like a solar flare, potentially it sucks for a while, but if the entire rest of the United States is good to go, it might be one of those things where it's like, okay, cool. I'm going to have to make it for a couple days. Eventually, there's going to be people coming out here. They're going to help us out. We're going to get through this. It's going to suck, but we'll live. If
Yeah.
it's nationwide, I'm screwed. And my priority list changes drastically. So the first thing I want to do is having just moved to this area, I haven't had a chance to meet all my neighbors yet. So the first thing I'm going to do is try to approach, see who's approachable and who's not, see if anyone knows any information, and try to make a good, friendly impression. Because if it is a long-term thing, I want to be already having a positive mindset with people instead of them thinking of me as a threat.
Yep.
So definitely try to do that. So let's say, we've accomplished we've got our water set aside. We've tried to talk around to people. I know my next step of things right then is going to be making sure that, I have better security, right? So my idea would be, my kids currently sleep in different rooms. I think for this purpose, for me, pull the sleeping bags into my bedroom so we're all in one spot. I can kind of condense my security circle so they're all in the same bedroom with me and my wife. Make sure that our weapons are good to go. If our lights and optics still work, great. If not, whatever I got to do to get our guns functional, or make sure rip a red dot off, throw on irons, whatever I got to do to make sure we're up and running. Go over the plan with my wife of like what I think the next 24 hours is going to look like. When am I going to sleep? When is she going to sleep? Because someone's going to need to be, potentially holding security. And then try to see if any kind of communications are up. But potentially if, in a hardened enough area, you might have like a bow fang or something like that, or any type of like small ham radio or something of that nature that might be able to pick up some kind of signal. See if you can get any kind of information. But yeah, what's your next step, man? After getting water, after talking to your neighbors, what are you doing next?
So what I'm going to do is, like you were saying, setting up security. Security is going to be a huge priority for me as well. It's kind of distracting with the.
Let me see if I can change that a little bit. Give me 1 second.
Is there something you can do about it?
1 second. Fix this in post. Is that better?
I think that fixed it.
Okay, I just put my headset in. Hopefully we don't get that tick 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 noise. I got a new case, so I'll take this all out in editing.
Okay.
So, all right, man. So yeah, so let's say so my next step was to start getting information, trying to get comms up if possible, come up with a security plan. What are you doing?
So what I'm gonna do is it's funny because a lot of the plans that you make and stuff like that are very similar if it's a good plan. You know what I'm saying? So like I'm gonna be doing the same thing. I'm gonna be setting up security. I'm gonna be finding out what people know. I'm gonna be going through the steps that I need to go through to figure out how I'm gonna best protect me and my family, and how I'm going to go about setting up, possibly talking to these neighbors and everything, and seeing what they got going on. What do they have? What resources can I talk to them about? Are they okay to even talk resources with? Are they going to be straight up rats? Are they going to fucking stab me in the back? You don't really know with a lot of these things, with a lot of these people. So you got to figure out who your people are.
Exactly. And I think as you brought up a good point here, I think we'll kind of shift this a little bit instead of go just back and forth. We'll just kind of like go on with the plan and just kind of touch and go on each other and kind of see what if we're missing something. But I think one thing to keep in mind too with this is as we kind of go through the scenario, thinking in the back of your head, everyone's living situation is different. Are you guys living in an apartment? Are you guys living in a house, in a duplex? Are you in a city or in a small town? or you're out in the boonies, right?
Yeah.
With this idea of like talking to neighbors, right? Think about this. Most of the time, so like I lived in an apartment previous to this. I really only knew a couple of my neighbors. Part of that was just because people moving in and out. Part of it was just not having the time to really go out and introduce my people into people. And I find a lot of times people living in apartments, it's they just want their own space. They
Yeah, they
don't
don't they don't want to talk to you.
exactly. They don't want to talk to you. They don't care. So then it becomes a matter of um, is it worth making that effort to go and talk to them? Is your plan to stay in, right? You and I both, it sounds like our plan is to bug in because we don't know the scenario yet. Other people, and I think a lot of this applies maybe to people who don't have kids, um, might be like, I'm good. I got my go bag. I'm going to the woods. See you in 2 weeks. In which case, more power to you. But I think that, for a lot of us, you go through this process of storing all of this food, all of this water, ammo, medical supplies in your house. It doesn't make a lot of sense to leave it.
Yeah, why
You know,
would you?
exactly. It doesn't like I know like when the whole prepping thing got like first really started, everyone was talking about bug out bags and just ditch your house and run to the woods and go live in the woods doing woodman stuff. And when which works to a certain extent, but that can't be like your forever plan,
Yeah.
like why bother storing all of this stuff if you're just going to ditch it at the first site. The other thing to consider too is like if you haven't gone out, so for example like me, like I'm new to the area, I haven't had a chance to go around and meet all my neighbors yet, right?
Hmm.
And for those of you who are more established in your area, you definitely should at least know who your neighbors are or the people in your little neighborhood, right? So I've got two streets. I'm in the middle of like two different streets. I guess street behind me, street in front of me, kind of like a cul-de-sac, but not quite, to where I could go talk to different people, right?
Yeah.
Some of them I notice already have gardens. Some of them have greenhouses. Some of them are kind of, and they're not growing flowers; they're growing food. So I see that kind of self-sufficiency idea already exists amongst some people, and I can see that other people have children as well. So it's one of those things where I can start to identify people to where hopefully I can get in good with and relate with and come across as potentially a friend and an ally, but also keeping the back of my mind where it's like, okay, if I can't get in good with you and I know you have children, I know that your kids are going to get hungry if you don't have food stores, and that makes you a potential threat to me. So I also check that box of having that information in the back of my head,
Yeah.
right? So making those initial assessments of your neighborhood.
Yeah. And it doesn't matter how good your neighbor is, guys. You always got to remember that food, hunger, it does a weird thing to people, you know?
Absolutely. I touched about that a little bit on the last episode where we talked about, I've touched about it on my Instagram,
Mhm.
that most of us are men of conviction in one thing or another. We have diehard beliefs that we are willing to lay our lives down for. Most of us, if we, for those of us who have children or have people that we live with that we love, if they are starving, and they're looking us in the eyes and they haven't eaten in days or weeks, a lot of that ideas of whatever notion that you hold yourself to goes out the window the minute someone offers you food.
Yep.
People have done terrible things just for bread. I think that which brings up the next thing too of in this scenario, knowing what I have supplied, I would kind of do an inventory here and start going through and being like, okay, what do I have? What if I haven't done this already? What do I have? How much food do I need to get through each day? How long will this last? Kind of a rough calculation here. um, is there food I have, for example, like things in my freezer, right? uh, if I have a freezer full of beef, it's all going to go bad. So should how can I cook it or prepare it in a way now? Do I have the stuff I need to cook it or prepare it in a way now that I can store it later? So one of the things I have is a bunch of those like 2 burner camp stoves that use propane,
Yeah.
and I've got a bunch of propane tanks for them. And it's like, look, I could get those fired up and start cooking up some food, right? Start cooking stuff up. A big thing about food that I know a lot of people like in the prepper community, especially when the whole prepping thing started, were like, no, guard your food. Everyone's going to come over and eat your stuff. All don't share. Don't tell anybody what you have. I
Hmm.
think that there's a point to that for sure, but I think there's also a benefit to where like food is a weapon, right?
Yeah.
And it's one of those things to where
Food is a
if
weapon. That's really solid.
a hundred
That's
percent,
yeah.
like food is in a scenario like that, food will be your best weapon, right? I can go up to the guy next to me and I can take a 12 gauge and be like, you better stay away from my house, right? And if his kids are hungry enough, that 12 gauge don't mean jack.
It doesn't mean
Right?
anything to him.
Exactly. But what does mean something is if I can go through and I can get a couple MREs and some canned goods and go take it to the neighbors and say, hey man, I know it's been a couple days, things have been out, supermarkets out of food. We don't have a whole lot to spare, but I know you got kids. You don't have to tell them like, hey, I've got a Costco in my basement, you know, but
Yeah.
you can go out and give a little bit of food and that builds goodwill, especially if that's someone that you're giving that food to. Maybe you need another gun for security. Like I don't mean like a physically another gun. I mean you need someone manning the wall. Maybe you need uh repairs done, or you need tools, or you need certain things that this person has
Yeah.
that they're not.
He might know something that you don't.
Yeah, I mean, like prime example. Maybe I want to shore up my defenses in my household, and I don't have any plywood over my windows, and this dude's got a stack of plywood in his front yard, and it's like, hey man, here's a little bit of food. Could I know it's not much, but could I get a couple pieces of plywood? I know, you're not doing anything with them, blah, blah, blah. Something like that, and that builds that goodwill to where
Yeah.
then the other thing with that too is potentially, that guy sees you as a friend, as an ally, and you've built a positive relationship there. So as long as you can kind of maintain that with others, right, you become less of a threat. So if someone does decide today's the day, that guy might look out for you because you looked out for him and you
Yeah.
helped him when he was down, right? And that's generally how people work more often than not, um, depending on how desperate they are. But food is a huge weapon. Same thing with water, clean water. So food would be huge. So that would be the first thing. The next thing is kind of inventory what my food is. Help out where I can around the neighbors with that. I think another big thing with that too also is going to try to figure out, again, having that conversation. Do we stay or do we go? Right? Do you stay where you're at? And this is going to depend a lot on your living situation. If you're in a high rise in a big city, your decision's probably going to be different than if you live in a hip town in, bumfuck nowhere. Right. So, do you stay or do you go? What's the danger, right? Do you live in an area that when they have a blackout immediately turns to like crazy rioting and the police are just out in force and can't keep anyone down, blah, blah, blah. And they have a hard enough time keeping control there, kind of like the whole BLM summertime that we had a couple of years back? Or
Yeah.
do you live in an area that's like, hey, power's out, let's not dig, well, that's fine, we'll make it through it.
Yeah. Right. It's just like, oh man, that's a bummer. It'll get put back on later.
Exactly. So like the big thing too is going to be, I would say, if within 72 hours you haven't had any form of emergency service respond at all within 72 hours, I would say it's safe to assume that this is not a localized incident.
Yeah.
Depending on the area where you live. Again, if you live in a town of like 53 people, you're low on the totem pole. If you live in a town of like, 53,000 or 153,000 or 500,000 or a couple million, and you haven't seen anyone roll in and be like, hey, we're from, wherever and we're here to help, uh, that's usually a good sign to indicate that like this is either going to be a long-term thing or this is happening a lot more than where you think it is. So that's a good point too to make, is that everyone has this idea. I mean, not everyone, but a lot of people have this idea that like, hey man, things are going to happen. I'm going to notice my phone is dead. My car's not going to start. I'm going to grab my go bad. I'm going to the woods and I'm being mountain man. And my thing is, realistically, most of us, especially those with families, are going to try to be like, okay, let's let's breathe this. Stop, breathe, make our way to the Winchester, have a pint, let it all blow over. Um, because most of us realistically will probably get through a scenario without ever having to do any shooting. Most of us are probably going to hunker down, eat, drink, and be merry until the thing's figured out. Now, but if it's long term, if it is like a nationwide EMP, then I change my tune there. So let's say 3 days, a couple of days have gone by, and you haven't heard anything, and we're starting to think to assume for the worst. If at this point in time there's no news, there's nothing coming, it's safe to assume that this is a much bigger deal than you think it is. And then this is where your thinking begins to get long term, because now you have to begin thinking like, okay, it's June. I have X amount of food. Can I make it through the winter?
Yeah.
Because even if I have the necessary things to grow my own food,
can I make it till the growing season? And not just the growing season, but can I make it to harvest?
Yeah, and yeah, it just all adds up quickly.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like, water, is one thing to where you can go out and find water. If you have a clean water source, you can consistently get water. But if you run out of food, your average, even a small town like where I'm at, surrounded by, farming communities, it's not like these farming communities are growing the necessary things I need to eat all the time. Some of them are growing, soybeans. Some of them are growing massive amounts of grain fields. And yeah, I could potentially go out there and like old school harvest with a sickle and get the grain, but we don't necessarily have the know-how
To even
to.
manufacture anything.
Yeah, I mean, it's great. I could go out, I could walk a mile down the road, go into the middle of a wheat field and harvest all the wheat I want. What the hell do I do with it? Like, am I going to just come home and beat it into a mixture and hope for the best? If you don't know what you're doing with that, that's not a positive, right? Like you don't know what to do. And there's nothing wrong with necessarily not knowing. I mean, there's a lot of stuff to try to know. I'm not expecting everyone here to know how to turn, wheat to bread.
Yeah.
But these are things to think about, like if you've got a box of MREs in the back and you're like, that's my emergency service plan, that's my emergency food plan, I'm raiding everybody else. That's a quick way to like get shot. Which that would be, the other thing again too is within those first couple days, I'm not going to necessarily say to loot places, but if you know that there's places where there are supplies that could be had, and that in this type of scenario, no one's going to be there to stop you, might be positive thing for you to go stock up in whatever way possible.
Yeah.
Get
a little something.
Another thing to remember too, and I know most of us on listening to this probably already know this, but in an event or a crisis like this, where no one's coming to help you, there's no police, right? There's no National Guard. Even if there are, they're at home. They have families too. They have to protect themselves. They have to protect their families and their whereabouts, and do all this other stuff. They're not going to roll around in a patrol car that's not starting anyway. You're not going to have hillbilly cop doing foot patrols. He's going to go, screw it, they're on their own, bud.
Yeah, that's exactly what he's going to do, dude.
Exactly.
Like, a lot of people think like, oh, don't worry, because at the end of the day, there's always going to be cops. There's always going to be someone to protect me, until
Yeah.
there's not.
See, and the same thing goes for fire trucks or ambulance, any of that. If your house catches fire in a scenario like this, this is one of those things where I know where they say like what you're supposed to do in a fire is get your loved ones, get out, everything else can be replaced, leave. In this scenario, I would say, as dangerous as it may sound, try to get as much crap out of your house as possible, as safely as possible, because that's all you have.
That's everything.
Yeah. I mean, like when you look back at, when people would lose their houses in the 18 to 1900s, that's what people were doing. They were rushing back in to get anything and everything they could because there was no way to replace it. That was it.
Yeah. And there was no insurance or anything like that. It was gone forever.
Yeah, it wasn't like, in this type of scenario, like you have to wrap your head around the idea that like there are so many things we'll be without, because in this scenario, again, we're kind of assuming that this is becoming a more long-term thing as we develop. You have to start planning for life as it was 150 years ago.
Yeah.
You're sure there might be ways to, some people might have working vehicles, might have ways to get certain things around, maybe even rudimentary electricity to a certain extent. But there's going to be a lot of problems. And a lot of the other thing too is for all these guys out here that are like, hey, I'm a lone wolf, or hey, I can do this by myself, or I got this, or I don't need to know my neighbors, I don't need to do anything. You guys got to remember that like you got to sleep at some point, and you can't always be guarding yourself, because at some point you're going to fall asleep, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if someone wants your stuff, they're going to come take it then. And if you're one of these guys who decides, well, I'm just going to be the baddest motherfucker on the block, and I'm screw my neighbors, and then you're just going to start kicking in doors and taking their stuff,
it's a good way to get shot.
Exactly. But let's say even you don't. Let's say you're fortunate enough you make it a couple weeks, maybe even a couple months by doing that. Well, congratulations. You've built a community of people that want you dead.
Yeah. People that hate you. No more law.
Exactly. There's no more law. And these people have now been hardened by the next couple of weeks, and last couple of weeks, the last couple of months. Death is now a daily occurrence. You are just another thug, right? Which kind of brings me back to the food thing with the food as a weapon. There's a book I read a while back. I can't remember what it was called, but one of these like EMP style books where one of the guys in the book, the bad guy, he was like a super wealthy like mega prepper and basically had a basement full of years worth of food. And him and the five guys that he worked with, who were kind of like the henchmen, basically rolled into the small town that he lived near and was like, "Oh, here's all this food. I'm now your leader," and became a mini tyrant.
Yeah.
And everyone just shut up and take it. Let him do whatever he wants because we have to eat. Give him the women, give him the whatever. Like it doesn't matter. We have to eat. And for those who live in for those who might be like, nah, dude, we're not going to get EMP'd. It's never going to happen. You can apply this to a lot of other scenarios too. You can apply this, let's say, for the example of civil war on American soil, right? If you don't think the power grid wouldn't be affected by that in any way, like you're wrong. You might still have working vehicles to a certain extent, and it might not necessarily be as bad as an EMP, but you're going to have rolling brownouts. You're going to have rolling blackouts. The people that, if it gets to the point to where we're actively shooting each other on American soil, the people that keep the system running are not going to be running the system because the system will have collapsed at that point, and you will be on your own.
Yeah. I mean, that's what everyone thinks they're ready for, bro.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of the.
A lot of people. It makes me laugh a lot because a lot of people think they are ready for the end. They're ready for the big collapse or whatever you may call it or whatever. But I don't think a lot of people really understand the severity of what was actually happening.
Yeah, you think about it, right? Consider this when it comes to the Civil War. The last time we had one using muskets, no electricity, and trains as our main way of getting from place to place. 600,000 Americans died in 5 years in a population that was less than half of what we have now. So now take the population of 380 million.
Yeah.
Cut off food supplies, cut off power, and have access to some of the deadliest military equipment known to man. Those numbers will be child's play if that happens. Like, the whole thing of like, you're not the main character, bro. Like, no, I mean, like, that's like a realistic thing here, right? Yeah. Is that like, you're not protected by plot armor. Like, if that kind of scenario happens, you need to make peace with whatever God you believe in, because the likelihood of you making it through it is not entirely fantastic.
Yeah, the numbers aren't stacking in your favor here, kid.
Right. And the things that will help you to do better is to be more prepared and to be better off as far as training, getting your mentality down, getting your skill set down, preparing for these things to happen and getting ready for it, to where if it happens, you're like, okay, this is bad, but I'm ready. I'm prepared somewhat. You buy as much time for yourself as possible by being as ready as possible.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. That sounds good. Put that on a t-shirt, bro.
Yeah. I see. I'm full of little idioms or whatever you call them like that.
I love it.
But yeah, I mean, I don't know this. I know that I realize that as we talk about this has kind of evolved a lot further out of what we originally had set up for this episode, but I'm okay with this. I'll allow it. But yeah, I think just kind of a refresher here of, just getting your mentality down and understanding, thinking about thinking through scenarios and thinking like, okay, if this happens, what do I do? Because the funny thing is about the scenario we kind of came up at the beginning of this, the odds really could just be that you were an idiot. You forgot to pay the power bill. You drive a piece of crap car and you didn't charge your phone.
Yeah.
It could be a total coincidence, right? But it also could be that like, hey, the apocalypse is here and you're screwed. So think about these things. Think about, what would you do if this was the case? Or, one that I face every so often is I've got family that lives over on the coast, over in the Seattle area. So when I travel, in the back of my mind, it's like, okay, if we were to get EMP'd or, any kind of thing like that were to happen now, well, if I'm on the road, what would I do? Would I try to make it back home, or would I just go to my final destination where I'm trying to get to and hope for the best there? Or would I just turn around and make a longer journey back to my house where I know my stuff is? Would I hope that and if I did that, is my stuff even still going to be there by the time I get there? Is it worth it? If I'm on the coast, and I'm visiting, what happens if my scenario happens? Like, I don't get to control when these things happen. And, for those of you that are thinking on here and you're like, man, I don't know, this EMP stuff's a little far-fetched, Civil War II, whatever, blah, blah, blah. Even just natural disasters. Seattle's due for a mega earthquake any day, like at any point, right? They've been, for 10 years, they're overdue. And, okay, so let's say I'm over there and a mega earthquake happens. Like, that's going to fuck my day up.
That's not going to be a fun time. All
right. And even if I live through it, it's going to be like, well, great. Now what? So the biggest thing with that is, like, you can have all of the guns, all of the food, all of the water. You could be stocked up like Noah's Ark for the apocalypse. But if you don't have the proper mentality or the way to think through problems, it doesn't matter, because you're going to panic and you're going to die.
Yeah.
And you have to have the ability to talk to people, the ability to reason with people. You're going to need to be semi-political. And I don't mean like Republican or Democrat. I mean being able to, like, solve problems in a way that, like, your community is going to appreciate. You have to develop those interpersonal skills. And I know for most of us, that means more than just going outside and touching grass. As much of a millennial / Gen Z problem as it may be, we have to actually go talk to people.
COVID got me talking to people, man.
I mean, I understand that all of us are ready to, like, fix bayonets, charge out of the foxhole, and take out the Jerry with an MG42. But talking to another human being that lives, on the other side of the fence of your yard is, like, more terrifying than that. I understand. So, I get where you guys are coming from with some of y'all. But, you got to go out there. You got to make friends. You got to make those relationships. Because if you look at statistically the areas that make it through these things, natural disasters, war, different, tragedies, and come out, come out less worse for wear, they have community, and they have a sense of community during it. There's going to be a sense of community that develops through common suffering. Yeah. But if you have that established beforehand, to where people are friendly and neighborly and help each other out beforehand, it makes it a lot easier.
To include as well, like during the Great Depression, everything like that, it was very, like, community was really there.
Yeah. You had a lot of people trying to help out where they could. And, unfortunately for a lot of people, that they couldn't offer much, but they offered what they could. And for those who are worried about, like, an economic collapse or different scenarios, I don't want it to be all doom and gloom. There is hope. There is light at the end of the tunnel. Human beings are a very resilient species. We've gone through 2 world wars, multiple plagues. We wound up not nuking ourselves during the Cold War. So we're resilient, and we get through things, but that doesn't mean that a lot of people don't, that also means a lot of people, unfortunately, sometimes have to die for us to learn that lesson. And I think the goal here, for me and Mike with this podcast, is to say that, like, a lot of these survival podcasts, a lot of the people out there, they're all, former special operators, something or others, SEALs in Delta, or you got, like, Mike Glover's back on special operations. And I know some people can kind of feel like, oh man, I'm not good enough, or I don't know enough to do here. And even talking to some of you guys on social media, I talked to some of you guys, and you're like, well, I never did X, Y, Z. So, you're the expert here. I'm like, dude, I'm just a guy with a phone that throws out ideas. Like, I don't know shit. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just a guy. And it's funny because it's like, I get a lot of people who are like, oh man, wow, thanks for hitting this up. I really like how you approach the subject, or, oh wow, really made me think about something, or oh wow, you're so smart on this. And I'm like, I'm just throwing ideas at paper, dude. Like it's just things I think about. I don't know if my mind, I'm not claiming to be smarter than anybody else. I'm not, you know. I just think about things and I'm like, hey, what would happen if this? Or you know what, this is kind of a smart idea. Or these are things I've faced before, and throwing that out there. And I just want people to realize that, like, you don't have to be a special operator to be the guy to make it through. You know, like
Yeah.
everyone focuses on them because they've got the cool stories.
Because they're the high tier, man.
Yeah, everyone focuses on them, the whole tip of the spear, blah, blah, blah. But, to use that military analogy, there was a lot of people who were just average infantry dudes or even non-combat jobs that went through it and have a lot of knowledge out of there too. And I think, the whole point here is to be like, you can be anybody and have this good idea. You don't have to have this qualifier of military service or this qualifier of being, it doesn't have to be this pissing contest of being like, oh, well, you're a civilian, I'm a veteran. Oh, well, you're a veteran, I'm a combat veteran. Oh, you're a combat veteran, I'm a special operations veteran. And it's like, I don't give it. Like, I don't give a shit. Like, you being a special operations veteran and telling me, like, how I can cut a second off my draw time doesn't feed my kids.
Yeah. And a lot of times you got to remember that those special ops, all of them, a lot of them wouldn't know what the fuck to do in the end of the world. Because, like, they're high tier, they're everything, right? They are incredibly good at what they do. That doesn't mean that they're incredibly good at staying alive in a situation like that. Yeah, I would want one with me running into a room to do some CQB kind of shit. They're going to be very talented in that department. Which one of them knows how to grow fucking corn?
Right. Well, it's one of these things where you think about it, right? So I like to compare it to like an NFL team, right? If you look at these NFL football players, right? Um, NFL guys, they have nutritionists, they have workout specialists. I mean, like, they have somebody that controls every aspect of their life to where the only thing they need to go worry about is playing football, right? They have someone that tells them what to eat. They have someone that makes all their meals. They have someone to tell how to work out, what to do, how to dress. Like, they have people for this, right?
Yeah.
This entire logistical train behind them supporting them just playing football, right? Special operations dudes, their job was to go in and do their thing. They have intel guys giving them intel. They have logistics guys bringing them supplies. If you take all of that away from them, yes, like, a football player in the NFL is still a very talented person, right?
Yeah.
But he might not know how to do those things that other people were doing for him, right? The guy that's, kicking in doors and killing bin Laden, he might be really good at kicking in doors and killing bin Laden. But you tell him, hey, I'm going to drop you off in the woods with a pocket knife, survive. He might not make that through. He might have some more training than the rest of us to do that. But I know, like, even Grand Thumbs talked about, like, getting dropped off in the woods north of Colville, Washington area, and to do SEER training. And there was like a mountain man dude that would like come into their camp and steal their supplies all the time. Just some hillbilly dude who lived in the sticks, live in the mountains.
Yep.
And they could never catch him, just running faster than everybody else, That guy, no special operations experience, not kicking indoors, probably doesn't even. And he's living off the land and outrunning these dudes whose job it is to live off the land. So don't think that, like, out there that you can't contribute to something because you don't have some kind of qualifier. So like I just want to put that out there. There's been a lot of guys I've seen kind of come out recently with some stuff that have been really just killing it and getting out to people. And I think there's a lot of us out there, a lot of people that have listened to this podcast, even that are, they've been in the guns for a while, they've been in the gear for a while, but they're really starting to realize that there's more to it than just shooting and scooting. There's survival aspect of it, keeping yourself alive, with food, water, that kind of thing, that there's more to it than just being, a combat unit. It's more being a well-rounded, being able to survive any scenario.
Yeah.
And people are more getting into that. And I think that that's the big thing for me is, I don't care what your build drill times are. I don't care if you've got a sub-second draw. That's awesome if you do. And like, if I'm looking for dudes to kick indoors, yeah, I'm taking you with me. I want to know more, like, hey, do you know how to grow potatoes?
Are you good at it?
Yeah. Like, do you know how to like distill water naturally? Or like, hey, how can I do you have any idea how to farm or how to fix things like vehicles? Are you a car guy? Because I'm not.
Yeah,
Is there a way to make my car work without using computerized parts?
Mhm. Or can you find me a car that doesn't need computerized parts? There's a lot that goes into it.
Yeah, exactly. Like if we're like, hey, let's try to get some vehicles. Do you know how to make like this truck over here run without keys? Certain things like that. Can you can you provide certain tasks or skills that I don't have? Because you can teach a monkey to pull a trigger. It's other skills that you need to bring to the table. And it's interesting, when you look at, I think it's interesting too, like when you look at certain people historically, like either in World War II or even in like civil conflicts around the world,
Yeah.
you'll see these guys who like prior to the war were like an insurance agent, right?
Yeah.
And then they're just like this epic badass in
Battle
the war.
hardened. Yeah.
In the war, they kill like 87 people and come back with a necklace of ears, and then they go back to being an insurance agent when it's over, like that guy. That's the dude I want. Like he can do a multiple facet of things. He's not just a one trick pony,
Yeah.
because that's the other thing is, okay, it's so sweet. You've got a bunch of dudes with a bunch of kit. You've got nods, your spec operators, and you never get shot at, and none of you know how to grow food. Be like, great, you're in an isolated community. You've separated yourself away from everybody. You've got all the guns and kit you can think of, and you have nothing, like no food, no water, no nothing. And it's like, okay, now what? I guess, okay, cool. Now we get to go be the bad guys and go take stuff from people.
Pretty much.
So it's because that's the thing too, is like even in these scenarios, I think sometimes, like media has kind of messed this up for us, but society will return to a certain extent to certain communities, regardless of the scenario. And you need to be ready for that. Because if you're just one of these dudes who like day one, you're like, I'm killing my neighbors day one. Well, the rest of the town's probably going to wonder what happened to Bob and Susan, And when they realize that Bob and Susan, as well as everybody else on the block, is dead and you're not, they might be like, that's weird.
Yeah, society is going to return to us a little bit.
Yeah,
not for a long time.
I think if you want to watch a good show about this, it's actually pretty entertaining. There's a show in 2009 that came out, 2008, 2009, called Jericho.
Yeah.
And the premise of the show is that the United States suffers a terrorist attack by the United States government, shocker, where like 50 different cities in the United States are hit with like suitcase nukes. And so this town in Jericho, Kansas, of like 5,000 people maybe, have to band together and survive post nuclear war. And it's pretty good story, and like it talks a lot about like how do you form a community to where they're not at each other's throats, to where they're not killing each other. At one point during the show, spoiler, they're getting ready to go to war with the next town over water rights, over who has access to the river.
Yeah. Which I could totally see that happening.
Absolutely. Like these are things that like people don't realize, like it was not that long ago that we literally fought wars over rivers.
Yeah.
And just for access to clean drinking water. We had, even though the West was won well into the early 1900s, we had cattle ranchers and farmers like literally shooting each other over water rights. So these are things to where like if you live in a community now where your water is pumped in from an aquifer, you're going to be shooting for water. Another really good one too, I can't remember what it's called. If I wish I could find it. If I find it, I'll post it on my social media. There was a short story that was put out one time, and it was this guy's take on basically kind of the collapse of the United States, which I think is the most accurate one I've seen so far. And I kind of want to get your thoughts on this.
Yeah.
But basically his thing was, it won't be a collapse, but it'll be what he called the feudalization of the United States. Basically what will happen is kind of these ideas of the 15-minute cities, if you've heard of these, where basically you'll have all these smart cities where you won't need a car and you can't leave the city because everything you'll want will be in the city, right?
Mm-hmm.
The idea is that, contrary to popular belief, they won't have to go door to door and take your stuff and force you into these cities and take your guns. Basically, what they'll just do is they'll just stop sending support anywhere outside of the city.
Yeah.
So, like, imagine if like Seattle and Spokane and maybe like Wenatchee in Washington State, the three main cities in the area, like one's in central Washington, one's in eastern, and one's in western. Like, imagine where in whatever state you're in, like the 2 or 3 biggest cities, that they just say, all right, we are only sending money to these cities. Well, eventually the rest of the towns are going to die off, and they won't, it's not like they're going to send troops out there and control you. They're just going to control the castle, right? Like the feudal system. They're just going to control the city, and anything that you need to live a modern life will be in the city. So you'll either have to travel to the city or fend for yourself. And so this guy's short story basically takes place in, it doesn't really name the state, but it's like, it's the security forces of 2 different towns fighting over a tree grove to make sure that they have wood for the winter.
Okay.
And it's like the 2 different sheriff departments, like one of a town of a couple thousand and one of a town of a couple thousand, are fighting over a shared forest on a property line. So that way they make sure that they have enough, like, wood to heat their houses in the wintertime. And basically, America still exists. America's still going strong, but the government only cares about the major cities and could give a shit less about the rest of middle America. And that, you're just on your own. The police aren't going to come. The military's not going to come. They're going to take care of the cities, and they're just going to leave you to it. So it's kind of the lawless Wild West, and just a return to like the 1880s, where again, basically, if you were in a major city, you had law and order. And if you're not, well, figure it out.
Yeah, it's pretty fucking dope.
Yeah, I mean, well, I think it's a really realistic picture of it, because I think it makes the most sense in the sense of like, it's logistically a nightmare if you think you're going to go go out and try to force everybody into an area, or try to, like the Nazis, right? World War II, they go out, they're like, we're going to go to small village 1, kill everyone that doesn't obey, load them all in trucks, take them somewhere else. That's a logistical nightmare, especially in a country as large as the United States, right?
Mm-hmm.
And as well armed as the United States. But if they were to say something like, okay, you want to send your kids to school, fantastic. The only schools funded by the state are in big city 1. And if you want to send your kid to school, you have to send them to big city 1 school. Otherwise, you're gonna have to, you can pay for private school, that's fine, but good luck, because all the jobs are in big city 1.
Yeah.
Oh, so with the grocery stores and the hospitals and everything else that you need to live like a normal modern life. Oh, and by the way, if you want to do that, if you want to live in big city 1, you have to get your vaccination or your implant for big city 1. So now that you're in big city 1, we can track you and everything. Otherwise, you don't have to do it. You can totally live out in the woods, be your own person. That's cool. But if you want to have like a baby in a hospital, you're gonna have to come see us.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's the most logistically possible way to do that, is if you force things down people's throats, right? We've already seen how well that worked, right? With COVID, it doesn't work very well. But when you make it to where it's like, hey, we're not forcing you, but again, going back to COVID and seeing this as an example, some people, they stuck to their guns and like, screw you, I'm not taking a shot, I'm not doing anything. Hell will move before I do. Some people though were like, well, it's the only way to keep, it's the only way to keep my job. It's the only way to do whatever. So they're absolutely going to do that.
Damn.
Yeah.
That's exactly. Yeah. Dude, that's really crazy take on that.
Yeah. I mean, I was, after I read that short story, man, I was thinking like, this is the most feasible way to make it happen. Cause think about it, right? Like if you showed up to like the small town I live in and you were like, hey, everyone pack your bags. You have to move to big city, to Spokane. Everyone here's be like, yeah, no.
Not yeah.
And then if, it came to shooting, there's going to be shooting, right? But if you just said, no, that's fine. You can live where you're at. But we're shutting the hospital down. We can't fund it. We're gonna fund a even bigger hospital in the city. Oh, and we're gonna stop sending trucks to the Super One or the Safeway or the Kroger or whatever grocery store you got nearby. Oh, and we're gonna stop sending fuel to the local gas station. Oh, and we're gonna stop funding the power lines here. We just can't afford it.
Yeah.
And then everything just gets pushed to the city to where that's the only choice you have left. If you want to live a normal life, you have to go to the city and you have to bend the knee and play by the rules. Otherwise, you have to develop the skills to live off the grid.
Mm-hmm. Which everyone thinks they're capable of.
Which, some people are. I mean, some people out there.
Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
People definitely are.
But I think it's a lot harder than a lot of people think it is. I think it's highly romanticized. It's definitely something I would love to do, but it's also one of those things that there's a lot more work involved than people realize. You know?
A lot of people think they want to go live off grid and stuff like that, but I have become so accustomed and I love modern, life, dude. I'm not up at 4 a.m. raising chickens, I'm not doing these hard things that our ancestors had to do to survive, It wasn't a matter of like, oh, do I want to do it? It was, there's no option.
And there's some people that like that's what they enjoy. They enjoy getting up every day, 4:30, feed the chickens, do whatever, being in nature. Like if that's you, there's nothing wrong with that. God bless you. We need more of you. But for a lot of us, right, that's a lot of us just want to get off work, sit back, relax, have a beer, watch a game, play a video game, hang out with friends, listen to a podcast. What was that?
I said high-speed internet porn, dude. Can't live without it.
but yeah, like stuff like that. So, it's one of those things where I think that, if something like this were to happen, it's going to be a harsh reality for a lot of people. And I think it's one of those things to where our ancestors, and even just as back as early as most of our grandparents, lived through very challenging and hard times. And in America, we've had it really good for a long time. We haven't had a world war recently. As much as they want to call COVID one, we haven't had a crazy pandemic lately. We're not sending, we're not having dad having to travel to, 8 states over to get a job during the Great Depression so we can eat, 3 beans instead of 2.
Yep.
So we've had it good for a long time. And I think that, unfortunately, just the way that history goes, that we're just due for a rough one.
I think it, like the saying goes, that hard times make good men make easy times make weak men. That kind of deal.
And mid-tier thoughts makes me hard. So.
And I'm just been hard this whole time. Mid-tier thoughts makes men hard, dude.
Hey, on a side note, though, as we kind of wrap this up here, so Home Depot is selling 560 square foot, 1 bed, 1 bath DIY houses for like
houses.
For like 40 grand.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm thinking we get a compound. Just saying.
I'm down with it, bro. I was gonna buy one of those to live in, dude.
I'm saying we get like, and this applies to all the listeners here. We're gonna make the mid-tier Army HQ here. We're gonna find a plot of land somewhere. Actually, you know what? This reminds me of? Do you remember when the guy that runs Hoplite Armor? I can't remember what his name is, but he ran for office in Montana, and anyway, he at one point bought like I think it was like 100,000 acres or 1,000,000 acres, some like stupid amount of land in like eastern Montana, and he was parceling it off to anyone and everyone on social media. I think it was like 10 grand for a slot that was like 50 by 50, and just to build like a compound of followers. And I was like, we'll do the same thing, but we'll actually make it work because we're not creepy people.
Because we're not creepy. We don't want to sleep with your wife.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the guy was pretty cool, fair enough, when he ran for office, but I think he didn't. I could be butchering this, but I don't think he won the seat he was trying to get. And then his posts just got like super anti-Semitic.
What?
Yeah, he went from being like the government sucks to being like it's the Jews' fault.
It's the Jews.
I was like, which I don't. Yeah, I don't know.
Wow.
Yeah, it was weird. It got real weird. Like really
Jesus.
fast. And it went for being like, oh man, a compound of this guy's kind of land. Like that'd be kind of cool, get a bunch of like-minded people, kind of, go off grid, build your own community. And then I saw that and I was like, oh, so he's played Far Cry 5 too much.
Yeah. That dude's lost in the sauce, baby.
Yeah. But yeah,
That's
man.
awesome.
Anyway, so for the people listening out there, I realize this one kind of went off track pretty quick and just got a little all over the place. But that's what we do here. So we wing it.
Sometimes it happens, dude. Sometimes it happens.
Yeah. And surprisingly, sometimes when we have these weird episodes like this, and I'm like, man, I don't know about that one. That was kind of all over the place. I'll get people message me. They're like, bro, that was fucking spot on.
That's exactly what we wanted to hear.
Yeah. I'm just like, hey, if you want to hear me just like ramble for an hour, like I'm sober still. So, but yeah. Hey, man. Another thing too, I meant to bring up to you, and if you are up in this area, there's I want to say this out to you. So to the North Idaho people that are listening, you guys have been awesome, welcoming me into the area. From some of the posts I made, a post that I was moved to North Idaho. People have been awesome reaching out. There is a pretty cool shooting event. I'd like to invite you out to, hopefully, if whenever you're out here. So next time you're out this way, hit me up and I'll try to introduce you to some of the people I've met.
Dude, you said shooting and I was already in, bro.
Yeah, I mean, I never got out. All right, everyone. Thanks for listening. This has been Mid-Tier Thoughts. If anyone else, if you have anything else, now's the time.
No, I'm good, dude. I feel like it's a pretty solid episode. We did kind of lose track there, but it was good stuff.
Yeah, I think it went in a good way. I'm proud of it. But remember, guys, mid-tier 10. Enter that in if you're going to get anything from the Men with Green Eyes. He's still got some good stuff. Same thing with Boogeyman Actual. He's got some good stuff too. Check him out. Also, I'm going to throw this out here. I've been in communication with this guy. He's been pretty cool lately. For those who are looking for someone who's kind of like going through their journey and learning and developing and putting out some really good content of what they learn as they learn it, go check out Tap Rack Tyler on YouTube and Instagram. So it's at Tap Rack Tyler, and it's also on YouTube. So he's been hitting me up, and he's super awesome, dude. I've had some pretty good conversation with him. I was actually going to talk to you about that, about potentially bringing him on the show at some point. Tap Rack Tyler has been putting out some awesome content. So he's a smaller channel right now as far as like getting up and started but he's got some really good stuff out there. Check him out. This is my shout out for you, man. So yeah, check him out. And I'm always out here to, like, anyone out there that's listening to, if you're like, oh man, I'm just a small channel, whatever. Like, if you're putting out good stuff, like, I don't care about clout, right?
Dude, even if you put out bad shit, dude, I will make fun of you.
Yeah. I mean, like, I will always promote someone that's putting out awesome stuff. I don't care about clout. I'm not doing this for clout. I'm not doing this for like, woo. I'm doing this because it's a fun thing I like to do and it's enjoyable. And I'm honestly humbled every single time that I see how many listeners we have. So,
dude, it's not real.
Yeah, I still sometimes have to pinch myself and be like, yeah, this is actually a thing. This is kind of cool. So, all right, everyone. Thanks for listening. Again, this has been Mid-Tier Thoughts, and catch you next time.
Later, man.
Bye.